Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to listen to a short presentation for my doctoral class. I will need to be recording it, so please keep that in mind. But if you have any questions along the way, just raise your hands, let me know, kind of flag me down, and we can talk about them. Today's presentation is going to be about how to engage, motivate, and help our most struggling readers in ELA as well as other content areas. So differentiation is something that we've talked about, but I'm hoping that through this presentation and the article that I've written, we can kind of take a new spin on that. I did hand out handouts. If you didn't get one, they're on the table by the door. I'll reference that throughout our presentation today. So if you have any questions or any comments, or if you'd like to see the actual sources that we got those from, please just let me know, and I'm happy to share anything that I have with you. I will step aside during the presentation and kind of run it from my computer, so that way you can see the slides, because the information does kind of cover the full page. Again, please let me know if you have questions, and I'm glad to help. So during the presentation, I'm going to be using ideas from the novel and the movie The Wizard of Oz to help us guide through this topic. So we'll start with discussing how we can understand our struggling readers, then we'll move into some strategies, and we'll follow with some ideas of how to motivate and engage them. We'll also talk about differentiation, and then think about what will come next for our students and ourselves in the years to come. So for the purposes of our presentation, we're going to define secondary students as in grades 7 through 12. I know that some of you do have 5th and 6th graders, but I feel confident that the strategies and the different things that we'll talk about will be applicable to your classrooms as well. Oftentimes when we start out the year, we're really excited to get going. We've decorated our classrooms, we've sharpened our pencils, we have our plans and our syllabus in hand, and really the best intentions in our hearts. After a couple of days of in-service, we're so ready to go that we want to get started right away. And some of our students feel the same way too. They're excited to meet us, they want to find out where their lockers are, they want to see their friends again, and sometimes they're even excited to learn. Some of our students, however, don't feel that way, and I think you can all think of one or two of them. They come into our room, especially ELA, already feeling defeated and like they're just no good at reading. It's these students that we're seeing in our Tier 2 and 3 classes, but not always. We have to remember that reading is really a complex activity, and there's so many different areas that can be sources for deficits, which sometimes we don't even see until they reach the secondary level. Reading skills are typically developed in pre-adolescence, often before they even reach us in 5th grade, but not always, and so this is where our work comes in. Even some of our most fluent readers that we have in class that volunteer to read can still sometimes engage in that mindless reading. They read the words on the page, but they have little to no comprehension of what they just read. So in using our skills and abilities as professionals, we can begin to identify where their deficits are and ways of remediating them. We often look for those initial signs, which I listed on that handout under the heading, "We're not in Kansas anymore." We see these as our students saying that they are bored, or they're distracted, or they simply give up. If we take a moment to think of our classes that we have this year, and we think of our list of students in Tier 2 or 3, and also think of that list of behavior issues that you have in ELA classes, I think you'll notice a trend. Oftentimes, the students that struggle in reading will also act out behaviorally in order to avoid their work because they feel they quote-unquote can't do it. I say quote-unquote can't because they're often more than capable of being able to do the work. They just need that extra support to help build their confidence to get them working on the same level as their peers. In order to best help these students, they need to be able to have some of these basic qualities. They need to be willing to participate. They need to read for enjoyment, and they need to develop a stamina to overcome difficulties when they're reading. So if they come across a word or a sentence or a topic they don't know, they don't simply just give up. In order to build these up within our students, we need to practice a few strategies. Most of us are doing these, and we've talked about these, but sometimes it's good to review them. So some strategies for effective readers. When we use pre-reading, during reading, and after reading strategies to help our students with their deficit areas, we begin to take away their excuses one by one. By teaching them the tools and practicing them over and over, we help them to see what a good reader looks like. They're able to learn how to be engaged, through teacher modeling and how to comprehend what they've read through a variety of assessments or check-ins. These can be things like questions, journal responses, oral responses, graphic organizers, or even whole class discussions. Students often start to associate being social with reading, which helps them build their motivation. We all know how much our students love to talk, so if we can curb their discussions to things about what they've just read, then we're all for the better. We can also practice a variety of reading strategies, which can be found on your handout. The first I'd like to discuss is the plan and monitor. Then I'll talk about making connections, and we'll finish up with synthesizing. It's important to remember that we discuss these reading strategies and practice them with the students, so that way we make sure they're assessing themselves along the way. This can be done with a reading journal, a list of questions, or they can be assigned a reading buddy, someone that they have to check in with and discuss their progress. It's important for them to keep up with their self-assessment, because then they will be able to see that they do have some strengths when it comes to reading. Sometimes knowing that they can only do half or a third of the work is the motivation in itself for them to figure out the rest. So first, the plan and monitor requires them to set a purpose for the reading. They can determine if they are reading to answer some multiple choice questions, to write a response, or to gather information. And then second, making connections, which is very much aligned with our ideas for IB. We want the students to be thinking about what they're learning in ELA and social studies and apply it to other subjects like math and science, and to the world around them. We want to create that deeper meaning. That's something we've repeated a lot this year. What is the deeper meaning? So lastly, we want them to synthesize. So to have them collect ideas from multiple sources, put it together, and create, again, that deeper meaning, that understanding. Very IB. So thinking about how to motivate and engage our students. When it comes to motivating them, we know that each of them is their own special little being. They're very, very different from one another. Some of them need to see the grades, the numbers on that page to get them to want to improve. Other students need us by their side and giving them words of encouragement each step of the way, after each question, after each paragraph they've read. And then some of them just want us to be completely hands-off. They want us to let them figure it out. It's difficult to navigate a class with so many different needs and personalities, but creating an environment that they feel they can be successful in will help them achieve their success. Many of our students by this point, especially in 7th grade, feel that reading is either something you get or you don't. Students in our classes with deficits in reading often feel that they're in the category of don't. So these are the ones that we really need to challenge to find their inner motivation to work on their skills. Oftentimes these students are social butterflies, so if we can tie reading to being social, then maybe we can just bring them in. Some ways of doing this are to have book clubs or tea chats or even silent reading times where students can then share what they've read at the end of the time. Some things that we can do to help further engage those students are to teach them and practice with them the strategies that we can use to help them take responsibility for their learning, like note-taking, or how to write an agenda, or to track their reading progress on their own. We can link their grades to effort rather than ability. We can explain the rationale for their work or the lesson and then emphasize the difficulty we expect them to encounter. Sometimes just telling them, we know this is hard, but we know you can do it, is enough. So being explicit and clear with them, we're giving them an opportunity to understand how and why they're doing what they're doing, and then we can help build that confidence for them to get them to complete the what, the task that we ask them to do. So there's no place like home, but there is a place like our ELA classes. We want to create an atmosphere where reading is a focus for differentiation. So if we think about our zone for proximal development from Vygotsky, this is us working just beyond what their level is currently. We can think about different differentiation strategies. So some pre-reading, some during reading, and some post-reading activities will often help our students to be the most successful. Again, if you look at your handout, you'll see that I've listed several of the strategies on there for you. I'd like to highlight just a couple because I know we're pressed for time. So pre-reading strategies. One of our favorites for IB is the I think, I see, I wonder. This is where we give students an image to look at, so those that don't know anything about our topic can still be a part of the conversation. If we look at the during reading strategies, we can model for how we think and how we're working through maybe some context clues or some difficult things that they're reading in their text. And the last one, after reading strategies. So we can do things like Socratic seminars where they become active participants in their learning. Or we can do speed dating. This is where we give one student maybe a topic or a sentence or a paragraph or a chapter, and they become the expert. And then they have to speed date or take 1 or 2 minutes to talk to another peer about that section. In the end, hoping that their expertise is something that they can share with others. Lastly, we need to think about what's next. So to wrap this up, it's important to remember that our students' deficits were not created in a single school year. And it's not realistic that they'll overcome these deficits or close these gaps in just a grade level. So just as we ask our students to create realistic goals for themselves, it's important that we keep in mind that we need to create realistic goals for ourselves. If we continue to work with them 1 year at a time, and we continue to plan vertically like we are today, we should be able to help these students grow through progression from 1 year to the next. We also have to keep in mind that the assessments we give the students are not always the best measures to know where they are, but they can be a tool to help us. We also need to continue to work together to create an individualized checklist with each student that will help both them and us to know where they are in their progression of their skills. So this is something that maybe we can put into their cumulative file, so that way it'll follow them from 1 year to the next. We want to make sure that their continuation of their skills and their growth is important to us as it is to them and their families. It's a long road, it's a long journey, but we know if we put our brains, our hearts, and our courage into it, there's nothing that can stop us. So that's pretty much what I have for us today. Thank you for listening, and again, if we have any questions, we can address them. But I hope that you've learned something new about how to engage our students and how to pull them in and motivate them, because they really are the ones that we really need to be focusing on. Closing those gaps, kind of helping them with their reading, we'll be able to see that reflect in their other classes as well. Thank you.